So welcome to Introduction to Geographic Information Systems. I have been kindly gifted the materials for this class by Frank Whitmer with the Computer Science Department. So we're going to be using a lot of his slides. We have a new text for this semester, so I'll go over that soon. And then, of course, a lot of new technologies to learn. So we're going to touch on the technology part of this first, just to make sure we get everybody up to speed. If anybody has trouble seeing the shared screen, please use one of your Zoom tools to raise your hand or unmute yourself and yell at me. So as I said, we're going to go over the course briefly, discuss the tools that you're going to need, and then we'll talk about our assignment. And then I have a separate session. We'll get just a brief, probably intro to what GIS is and how it's used and why you might care about this class. A couple of Zoom housekeeping things. We will be recording these. I will, at a later point, caption those recordings, hopefully find some time to break them up by subject and put them on Blackboard so that you can refer back to them. As I've told a few of you, I'm going to be strongly encouraging everybody to join the synchronous session. So you have the option to attend during a live session at any point because I can't extend that option to non-synchronous students for privacy reasons. But I won't be taking attendance. I won't be requiring you to be here. So you won't be penalized if you can't make a session or if you're just joining to get that access. And it will take me some time. I've done some trial runs for 10-minute videos. Some of them take 10 minutes to caption. Some of them have taken 48 hours. So I don't have a lot of control over that. There will be some delay in the videos getting onto Blackboard for that reason. So this is a strong message out to those students still registered in asynchronous. Come over here, join us on the dark side. You don't have to talk, it's fine. You can watch the videos whenever you want, but leave your options open. I think especially the synchronous lab is going to be a far more effective way for you to learn from each other and make this a much more interesting class. So if you need any help getting switched over, let me know. I can't do it for you, but I can try to help you get into UA Online and make those changes. Does anybody have any questions about Zoom? Who has learned to unmute their microphone and ask those questions or use chat?
No questions so far.
Thank you for the feedback. We will have, we'll have to add a separate session for the labs. So there will be 2 different login informations and that gets back to the privacy. So you'll be seeing that on Blackboard soon. And I apologize for the extra confusion, but we're trying to stay compliant. So that gets to Blackboard. For some of you, this may be your first rude introduction to Blackboard. It's gone through a lot of evolution over the years. It is UA's online learning management system. Some people just use it for online quizzes. Some people store all of their course content there. Some professors have never had to use it before and are currently getting a crash course in how to reach out to their students. So I'll just give a brief introduction because some of you are abundantly familiar with it and I don't want to penalize you for that, but your Blackboard is going to look a little bit different because I obviously have some tools that you don't, but you'll use your UA Online login to get into the Blackboard system. You just go to classes.alaska.edu. You should see a similar screen. You can arrange things differently, but you should see your list of courses. As you can see for this class, we have 4 sections because of privacy and different enrollment styles. I'm not sure yet whether I'm going to use the lab sessions because it just tends to get really repetitive. But I will let you know that as we go through the semester. Right now, you can see some of these, some things I haven't shared with you yet. Your announcements will also come to you via email, and I apologize, I think one of those slipped out twice. I'll try not to do that. You can always find the latest copy of the syllabus on Blackboard. If you need to get a hold of me, it would help if I showed you what it looks like. Here's my contact information. I don't have an office. I'm an adjunct. I don't feel like sharing my phone number quite yet, so we're going to try out Zoom meetings Sunday between 3 and 4:30. I will be in this Zoom meeting. This one will have a waiting room so we can give privacy to anybody who has questions or issues. We'll see how that works, but please feel free to email me at any point. I may not be able to respond to your email, especially during my workday, but I will get back to you as soon as I can. You've obviously figured out online lecture access. I'm going to be adding an additional Zoom link for the lab session, as I mentioned, and some tutorial information for people who haven't figured it out yet. The other big piece that you as technology students are going to have to figure out is the software access. So we will be using ArcGIS for our lab sections. And we'll be focusing primarily on ArcGIS, so I'm going to talk about some alternate systems. And there's a couple of different ways that you can access that as a student. The traditional way for online access has been through the Geomatics server, and you can get into that with a VPN, or you can use a local installation now. And I have a list of codes for that. Haven't figured the best way to distribute those yet, but I'll make sure that each of you leaves here today with one. So there are instructions on how to install that on Blackboard. I encourage you to try to set that up yourself before the lab next week, but we will be going over those details again in the lab as well. You'll also see information about your grades show up in Blackboard eventually, and there's some other links, some helpful links that I've added, and then some outreach stuff from the university if you need any additional support getting adapted to a COVID world. There's definitely a lot of resources available and a lot of other people that are trying to figure out how to make this all work. Oops. Okay, so how many of you have used ArcGIS Pro? Can you hit a button on your Zoom, yes or no, or unmute yourself and use your actual voice?
Completely new to this.
Cool.
I have not used it.
I haven't used it either.
I have not used it either.
Great, that's really helpful to know where everybody's at. I know some people just come into this for a degree requirement, and it's good to know that we have a lot of beginners. I hope to make you fall in love with GIS the way that I have. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So ArcGIS Pro is definitely one of the most powerful GIS tools out there. Esri is at the forefront of GIS technology. They have not only cornered the market, they've pretty much invented the market. They are able to control it enough to live in a only Windows world without anybody being able to complain. So you're limited on how you can install it, which is why we give you the Geomatics server option. But you're also being given an ArcGIS Pro license, which to give you some comparison, my office just bought a single license for one user and are paying $3,600 for that license. It's a massive, powerful tool that you now get free for a year as a student. You can't use it commercially, but you can make a lot of cool maps with that, do a lot of data analysis that most people don't have access to. So the first step is you should have received an email invitation from Kaisha. Has anybody not received that invitation? You could similarly wave your digital hands in the air.
I have it.
You have not?
No, I have. I was just
Oh, okay,
verifying.
great, thank you. Okay, if you did not receive that email, it will make it very difficult to go forward with this course, so please get in touch with me. With that invitation to join the UA community, you then have access to it two different ways. You can use the Geomatics server, which is a virtual private network connection. That can be difficult for people who have limited bandwidth. There's definitely a risk of losing your connection in the middle of a process. It should still run on the server, things should still exist there, but there's always the risk of data loss or digital confusion in that kind of setup. So you have also the option of installing it on your Windows PC. If you don't have a Windows PC at home, you're probably stuck using the VPN connection, but we can also talk about another option here in a second. So for the local installation, I have a list of license keys and I just need to assign one of those to each of you so you can get logged in. Has anybody done an initial install of the software without licensing it yet?
I downloaded the VPN and got connected to it, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, did you see make it all the way through the remote access? And
Yeah,
see
like took me to a whole different computer screen, right?
Yep.
Yep,
Great.
that's it.
I had that working about 3 weeks ago, and just this week it stopped working and did some troubleshooting. So I've learned some new things about that VPN. If you have trouble with it, I can try to help, but you can also get a lot of assistance from Andrew Tibor in our department and from the IT folks. Basically for me, the solution was not to try to run two different VPN softwares at the same time. Even though I wasn't connected to the other one, it was fighting this one. So all the fun new things that we're learning. So I mentioned another alternative. This one's personally exciting for me. QGIS is a software that originated in Alaska. The original source code was written by Gary Sherman from Eagle River. It has become a global GIS software written primarily by volunteers and crowdsource funded. I actually use QGIS in my work far more than I use ARC because I only have an ARC Basic license at work. It's a little baby software. You can't do a whole lot with it. And I can do more with QGIS than I can do with that license. Now that I have ARC Pro for you guys, that'll also be fun to use. But I'm highly in support of open source. It's a great tool and I encourage you to use it for those periods in your life where you don't have access to ArcGIS. There is a set of lab materials written for QGIS that goes with our new textbook, but they are also brand new. They were just finished by the author this year. This class is aimed at ArcGIS Pro, so that's going to be our primary focus. But I'm happy to try to help you use QGIS if you want to do that in addition to it for your own information. I will support you in every way that I can, but I'm not going to require it. So I will leave that option open to you. And if you don't think the VPN will work and you don't have a Windows PC, I think QGIS QGIS is probably a very achievable alternative. It'll just take a little bit more scrambling for all of us to figure out how to do both of those at the same time. So I want you guys to think for a moment, because this is going to be the interactive part of this first part of today's session. I'm going to talk about myself some more because you're probably really excited to hear me continue talking. But I'm also going to ask you to talk about yourselves. So these are a couple of questions that I'm going to ask you. So as I mentioned at the very beginning, I am new to this course. It was originally developed by Kaisha Wong and last taught by Frank Whitmer. I have a background in hydrographic surveys. So most of my GIS life has been spent mapping the ocean floor. So I'm used to a different set of tools than you might traditionally find in a GIS department. I'm used to working in a three-dimensional environment, but it's all GIS and I love making maps. So I got kind of volunteered for this at the last moment, so forgive me as I come up to speed on some things. My undergraduate was from Fairbanks in geology, but I did my master's here in the ESM program. So I'm a Nanox fan. Take that as you will. You're free to hate me for it, but I was born in Fairbanks and Fairbanks is better, sorry. I now work as an environmental scientist for PND. I get to do a lot of GIS there. As I mentioned, I use QGIS. I'm also getting to use Global Mapper, which is a GIS software that does really nice three-dimensional work. And the dreaded AutoCAD, if any of you are looking into going into drafting, I can poke buttons in AutoCAD until it's broken. And every once in a while I can spit out something that I need. It's another great partially GIS, partially drafting program. So another good example of the same concepts that we're going to be talking about. And then my other technological passion / connection to GIS is database design, programming, management. I am absurdly fond of tools that help you manage data and different ways to use them, and not enough hours in the day to play with all of them. So that's a little bit on my interests in GIS. Oh, let me give you a couple of pretty examples to get in the right screen. This is one of my first nautical charting surveys. This is an ugly little scratch image that we made up to share with the village of Eek while we were charting the Kuskokwim River near Bethel. We'd spent some bad storm days hiding in this little side channel. As you can see, the background line in this image is a shoreline digitization downloaded from NOAA. And the beautiful rainbow color image is a basically a rainbow depth mapping of the data that we collected of the river. So dark blue areas are the deepest parts of the river, red is the shallowest. If you notice on the left side of that red border doesn't anywhere near line up with the channel. We found while we were out there mapping that the channel bed had actually moved in some place almost 1,000 feet, and that river was last mapped in 1930 something, I think. So a significant amount of change in just 60 years, and a lot of time spent out there remapping. So we spent 2 years on that project. This is a recent project that I've done. This is a figure taken out of a report. We had harbor personnel collecting marine mammal sighting information over the course of a year. And this is just a representation of the density of the data that they collected. kind of an interesting spread throughout Dutch Harbor. If you notice down in the lower right corner, oh, I think I can annotate. Here we go. I don't know what the spotlight does. Can you guys see a spot from the spotlight? Ah, maybe if I learn to use it correctly. It didn't work. I think I just hold it there. Anyway, those are all of the seals and sea lions that like to hang out at the dump. So if you ever want to see marine mammals in Dutch Harbor, go to the dump. And then this is another recent mapping that I completed for the Kenai National Wildlife Refuge. We were there to do wetland mapping, and while we were there, they asked us to do some invasive species identification so they could identify risk factors for invasive species coming into the refuge. I'm not sure where they're at in construction, but this mapping project will eventually connect some trails from the school, which you can see in the lower left, into Kenai, that would be Soldotna, because they have a lot of students traveling to school along the highway, which is obviously dangerous. So, thanks for piping up, everyone. It's great to know who's here, and I think it's really especially important this year to make sure that we go to the extra effort of forming those connections. A big part of why you go, especially why you go to a local college, is to make connections with the people you may be working with in your professional career, or whatever direction you want to take what you're doing at UAA. So it's going to be a little bit different, but I think an interesting way to form some new bonds and new ties to people. So we're gonna work on some different ways to do that. All right, that's what 5 minutes feels like. I'm gonna follow that up with a poll so I can hear the voice of the masses. Is that too much time? Not enough time?
I think it was a good amount of time.
I think it was good.
It's
That's
good.
perfect.
Yeah,
I
it was good.
agree.
Oh, I was wondering why you guys were talking. Great job talking. Now play with my new toy. You should see a poll. What happened to my participant screen?
Why 42?
That is a good question. If you haven't already read Douglas Adams, 42 is the answer to the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. So it's always a good answer. For some reason, I'm going to admit this now, YouTube keeps hiding you all from me, so I'm going to assume that you're all back and ready to go. I can no longer see the participant screen. Where you can wave your hands for help, but I can see the chat, and of course, if you need to ask me a question, you can always pipe up. It's much appreciated. We'll get some of these kinks worked out, hopefully, or Zoom will anyway. All right, so we're going to try and get through the rest of this section fairly quickly, and then do some actual talking about GIS, because that's a lot more interesting than hearing me talk about university stuff. This is our brand new textbook. I've had the 3rd edition of this for, I don't know how long. I can't admit that I haven't read all the way through. So I consider this a really good reference book. Your first reading is assigned as reading chapter 1. What that means to me is look at chapter 1, get a sense for how the book is laid out, get a sense for whether or not you want to read all the way through chapter 1. I intend to treat this course as I treat my own life, which is references are available to you, use them. But also keep in mind that it takes you time to look things up. So it's a good balance to strike, know what's in the book. Has anybody purchased the book yet from the university, the new online bookstore? Why can't-
I bought mine off of Amazon.
Okay.
I
I'm-
purchased mine on Amazon as well.
Okay. What I'm wondering is when you purchase the book from the university bookstore, you should also get a digital copy of it. And I'm wondering if that comes to you before you get your text or whether you have to wait to get that to find your digital code. It's not critical. I just want to know how long it's going to take everybody to get textbooks in hand. Because I know at the beginning of the semester, many people are still figuring out their schedule and switching classes for the next couple of weeks. So,
Just to mention, at the front page of the book, it does give you a digital course pack key.
okay. In the
the
textbook itself.
Yeah, the first page right inside the cover.
Okay. So I should probably expect that to take some people a little while. I got my digital copy through the university, so I don't have the physical text. Also don't know how to bring my participant screen back, sorry. I don't know what you're all doing. Oh well. All right. Along with the online or the digital text and the textbook, he also has a website. That's where we're pulling our lab materials from. You can download them directly from there. I'm also going to have them posted on Blackboard and probably on the Google Drive that some of you have already accessed for the syllabus. I live in a multi-platform world, so I'm going to keep materials in Google Drive, including lecture slides. I'm hoping to get them up in advance of the lecture. Joshua, sorry, I just saw your message. Did you order that from the bookstore? Your textbook? Okay, so that's a yes. So it sounds like it takes a couple of weeks to come in from the bookstore. So if you think you're going to stay in this class, get your book on its way, please. Meanwhile, there's some materials available to you on the website. So what is GIS? GIS is the digital representation of anything that can be spatially referenced. So different types of geographic objects, such as linear roads, points representing a town on a map, shading areas, either to categorize something. You know, we're going to paint France purple and Italy green to represent some sort of information, or more recently, shading on a more subtle tone to show things like percent of vegetation coverage or elevation. There's a lot of different ways to visually represent those models. And it has to be spatially referenced to fit into a GIS system. So we're going to go into that in more detail. But if you were wondering what you were signing up for, you're here to make digital maps that mean something to people. So we're going to cover the underlying fundamental concepts of GIS, which might not always seem as exciting, like as going right out there and making a new Esri storyboard and showing it to the world and having people give you exciting feedback, but it is the underlying framework for how that's developed. So it's the important building blocks of understanding how those things get created. And obviously we're going to be learning how to use ArcGIS or the alternative QGIS. Okay, I'm going to, missing a piece here, just a second. That's what I'm looking for. So this is a breakdown of what our different course sessions are going to cover. Some of these we'll spend multiple weeks on because each of these is its own topic, essentially. So we're going to look at what different data models look like. Like I mentioned, you can have linear features, you can have area features, you can have features that are represented by a pixel. We're going to talk about map projections and coordinate systems, which if you are in a geospatial field or program here at the university, I hope you will hear that topic kicked to death. And I hope you will come to understand how important it is to know your projection and your coordinate system. So we will continue to beat that dead horse until everybody draws everything in the same place. I especially wish to communicate that to any future engineers out there who like to just draw buildings and hope that they show up in the right place. We're going to go over making maps. I haven't yet figured out why Frank has making maps before some of the other things that come later in his course. I'm not that far ahead of you guys in this course, but I will find that out and let you know. How to find data is a large part of every mapping project I've ever done. There are so many resources out there on the web, or of course ways to get it yourself. So we're going to go over some of those, and I'm going to hand you my personal library of links to find GIS data that I've been curating for about the last 10 years and use it with my blessing. So we'll talk about database management because it's cool and fun. It also is the best way to compile all of your data into one place, understand how it goes together best, and then use that information to represent it to somebody else. And then of course, spatial data analysis, which is the real firepower behind a GIS, is how I've now got all of this in one place. What can I do with it? How can I figure out how one piece of this puzzle affects another? Can I figure out, you know, if these are my points on a map, how they interface with this raster, which is the pixelated data that tells me, for example, vegetation density. And then Frank's very optimistic onward to the future. So there's a lot of different options for you in GIS courses at UAA. This is only the beginning. And I hope enough of a beginning to get you really excited to go all the way through, because there's a lot of really neat things you can do with GIS. There's also extended coursework available from UAF. I've been finding lots of new programs online. You can go take a free Python programming class from Harvard online. Of course, you don't get a Harvard degree for it, but you can learn new fun things. So here's the little sneaky bit of this class. I've been telling people, I'm encouraging everybody to sign up for the synchronous program because I cannot give you access to this lecture or the live lab lecture if you are not signed up for the synchronous course. There are FERPA laws that prevent that for privacy reasons. So sign up for the synchronous course, attend or don't. I'm not going to track you down and give you a hard time over it. I'm not going to change your grade because of it. I am going to tell you, you're better off coming to class and learning in real time. You can ask me someday about the year that I forgot I was signed up for Calc. That was quite the scramble to finish that off. So don't make my mistakes. Be engaged in your learning. You'll enjoy it quite a bit more. So unfortunately, I didn't get our assignment up on Blackboard yet, but it will be on Blackboard. And it's kind of a rehash of the introductions that you guys gave. But essentially, I'm going to ask you each to create a wiki page to introduce yourselves for a couple of reasons. I want you to be able to reach out to each other for help when you have a question. So getting an understanding for who's in your class, where their interests and skills lie, how they might be able to help you. I'm going to ask you to put your preferred mode of contact in there. So whether you want to get, I believe you can message each other through Blackboard, or use your official university alaska.edu email or your preferred email that you have listed. I'd like you to make those choices for yourselves, but I'd also like for you all to make yourselves available to other students. When I was able to see the participant screen, it showed you all as having logged in as guests. I think there's some different tools that you can get if you go sign up on that, is it alaska.zoom.us tool that I linked in Blackboard. You can go there and claim your university account, and then you're able to set up your own meetings with other students. We're also going to have, probably not for this first week, but later on down the road, breakout sessions for the labs, so you can work a little bit more directly one-on-one. I think it's really important to learn from each other. And also more recently, it's become important to learn to collaborate in a digital world. That's something that my office is still coming to terms with. They like to write things on paper and store them in files. So they're now using Teams, and I'm so proud of them. So our first assignment is going to be to go in and do your wiki page. I'm going to set up my example tonight, and then put a template there for you. So you have until next Thursday to finish that. I would like you to each comment on 3 other students' wikis. Some of that's going to feel a little bit forced at first, but it's going to teach you to use the tools. It's also going to help you connect with other students. So we're going to put a little, I'd like you to have your wiki up by the 3rd, so everybody has an opportunity to go out and comment. Comments due by the 8th. So we're going to try that for this first round of assignments. And then after that, I'd like those wiki pages to become the gallery of your work, since you can't sit with each other and show each other your maps in a computer lab, or you know, stand up in front of everybody and present. We'll probably do some sort of digital presentation method further down the road, but this just gives you a way to collaborate easily, and we're going to do it through Blackboard, because Blackboard is going to become very important to your academic life. So I think that's the last slide. Oh, if you have the text, again, I suggest that you get oriented with it and take a read through chapter 1. It's pretty short, 26 pages with lots of pictures. And then it gives you a little bit more of the fundamentals of GIS. So we are going to start talking more about that in our second lecture of the evening.